All right. We're going over system TES, Talmud Eser Sefirot, part 1, Tzimtzum restriction, and Kav line, chapter 1. And we're finishing 1.4 and 1.5. Rules to understand Talmud Eser Sefirot. The first rule when we learn Talmud Eser Sefirot is we want to change unnecessary into necessary. That means we want to convert from unnecessary, which is external. That is when we think that it's talking about a spiritual reality in another dimension attainable only by Kabbalists, and we make it internal by understanding that it's actually talking about our perception of the reality we live in with our physical body in this world. The second rule is impossible, and we convert it from impossible, which is when it's talking about the past, that is states that it happened in the past when the will to receive cascaded to our world. That is how it's normally taught in Talmud Sefirot. And to understand that it's possible. It's talking about our future. It states a perception we go through on our path of spiritual advancement. These are states that a Kabbalist wrote and attained in the order that it's conveyed. And if they attained it in that order, that is exactly the order we're meant to attain as well. So it's talking about states that we go through, not states that we went through. And finally, secrets. Secrets is when we think it's talking about others. That it's not about self, but someone or something else. It's about a creature. There's a creature in Ein Sof, or we think about the souls, or we think about Adam Rishon. We're always thinking of somebody or somebody else. And it's actually, to make it disclosed, we've got to understand it's talking about ourself. It's about ourself and how we perceive reality. And the self changes along the way. And the idea is to see where is the self, and then seeing the others, the states that the self feels it's going through. To summarize it, unnecessary is when we think it's talking about something external, and we make it necessary that it's internal. We change it from impossible when it's talking about the past, and we make it possible because it's talking about the future. And finally, secrets is when we think it's talking about others, and we disclose it to ourselves by understanding it's talking about ourselves. Here's a quote of Bala Sulam. 3/3 in the concealment of the wisdom. There are 3/3 in the concealment of the wisdom of truth. The first is the unnecessary. The second is the impossible. And the third is the glory of God is in the concealment of a matter. I will clarify them one at a time. The first third is unnecessary. This part has no loss in it at all, of course, except for the matter of cleanliness of the mind. Since we find that triviality is the most harmful saboteur. All the destructors in the world are triviality people, meaning contemplate trivial matters and announce trivial announcements. This is why we do not accept a disciple before he is sworn to remove himself from these saboteurs. Second third, impossible. This part, of course, requires no oath. However, because it is possible to disclose it by mistaken words, and to take pride in it, in the eyes of the masses, it is included in the oath as well. The third, the glory of God is in the concealment of a matter. This part is the gravest in the concealment, for it has caused many casualties. Note that all the sorcerers that ever were, and all the cunning ones, come only from such disclosures, where immature disciples erred in the matters and went out to teach anyone they came across, without considering if they were fit for it. They went out and used the wisdom for human purposes, for lust and honor, and they have taken the sanctities of the Lord to secularism and to the street. This is what is called practical Kabbalah. From the article, The Quality of the Wisdom of the Hidden in General, from Bala Sulam. The phases. The order of attainment. This wisdom is generally divided into two parallel identical orders, like two drops in a pond. The only difference between them is that the first order extends from above downwards to this world, and the second order traverses from below upwards, precisely by the same roots and makeups imprinted at the root when they appeared from above downwards. The first order is called the order of descent of the world's Sefirot in all their occurrences, whether lasting or transient. The second order is called attainments or degrees of prophecy and Holy Spirit. A person rewarded with it must follow the same trails and inlets and gradually attain each detail and each degree, precisely by the same rules that were imprinted in them upon their emanation from above downwards. A revelation of godliness does not appear at once, but gradually over a period of time, depending on the cleansing of the attaining, until one discovers all the degrees from above downwards, And because they come in an order of attainment, one after the other, and one above the other, as do rungs of a ladder, they are called degrees, steps. From the article, The Essence of the Wisdom of Kabbalah, by Bala Sulam. What this means is that the way we learn Talmud Sefirot is the way we're going to go up the degrees. The phases we're going to go over now are the phases that we actually go through to cross the barrier. And all these rules of unnecessary, impossible, and secrets we're talking about our path of attainment. We're talking about spirituality. So there'll be many bodies of knowledge that are very important, but they're important for our physical life, not for our spiritual life. So when we're dealing with these rules, we're talking about what is the best way to look at the knowledge that we're learning and convert it from knowledge to Torah, which means to our way of advancement. Before the barrier, we go through 4 phases. So 1.1 to 1.4, which is called unformed, which is called humanity. And this is shown by a vessel with an arrow going in, that it's receiving filling, external filling. And then we go through 2.1 to 2.4, which is called chaos, the spiritual society. This is shown by a vessel with an arrow going out because it wants to bestow filling to others. Then we have 3.1 to 3.4, which is called darkness, which is called the group. And this is shown by a vessel that on one hand is bestowing filling like it was in phase 2, but now it's also learning how to receive internal power. And then finally 4.1 to 4.4, which is called spirit. It's called the individual phase. And this is with a vessel showing an arrow going only in because it no longer wants to bestow filling to others. It just wants to receive internal power. It wants to become the creator. And when it reaches the end of that, then it passes the barrier. And its sense of self shifts from feeling that it's the will to receive to feeling that it's the will to bestow. Root phase, thought of creation, preparation. It's also called keter, crown. This is all the preparation for our entire life ahead of us. This is the starting point. This, of course, is totally unconscious, and we only get to feel ourselves consciously when we are born into humanity, which is called phase 1, humanity. And it's also called chachma, wisdom. And this is called unformed and unformed chaos, which is 1.1 and 1.2. And this is 1.1 is when we're dealing with the still part of us. That means we're dealing with sex, food, and family. And we reach 1.2 and we're starting to deal with the desires of money, knowledge, money, honor, and knowledge. And this again is shown by a vessel which is receiving external filling of money, sex, family, knowledge, honor, and money, of course. Then at a certain point in our lives, our point in the heart, our passive point in the heart awakens. And this is called 1.3 and 1.4, darkness in unformed and spirit in unformed. This is when we feel something's wrong in life. And it's not that we're not getting enough money or not getting enough knowledge or our family is in despair, but rather we're feeling like on a whole things are problematic. We're feeling that we don't have control over our lives. So it's not that we're missing certain elements, rather we feel a overall sense of lack of control. Then at a certain point, we reach phase 2, we find a spiritual society, and they teach us how to bestow. And this is why you got the vessel showing an arrow going out, because we're taught that the problem in the world is that we're not bestowing to each other, rather we're just receiving for ourselves alone. And this is called Bina, understanding. It's called 2.1, 2.2. 2.1 is unformed in chaos, and 2.2 is chaos and chaos. And 2.1 is when we're new to the society, we're learning about the concepts for our first time, we're learning what is bestowal, what is reception, and we're just very new. 2.2 is when we already feel like, we've been a few years in the society, we feel like we have some kind of mileage experience there, we feel like this is the place that we need to be. and we, depending on the person, will get there stuck in this phase for, it can go from a few months to many years. And at some point, it's not enough. Our active point in the heart awakens, and this is shown by 2.3, 2.4, which is darkness and chaos and spirit and chaos. And this is where we feel that even the spiritual society is not giving us what we thought it would give us. It's not that they're doing anything wrong. It's just that we feel that we need something higher. And this is when we arrive to phase 3, the group, which is called Tiferet, beauty. And this is shown by a vessel where you've got an arrow going out, just like before in phase 2, where it's bestowing external filling, but now it's learning about receiving internal power. And it reaches 3.1, 3.2, which is unformed in darkness and chaos and darkness. And this is where it feels a separation of the sense of self. The sense of self is no longer feeling part of the society. Rather, it starts to feel part of the group. And it's in the society and in humanity. Just like phase 2, when you arrive to it, you felt that sense of separation, that there's the 99%, we normally call it, which is humanity, and then the 1%, which is the spiritual society. The same transition happens when we enter phase 3 of the group, that we feel that the 99% is not the society and the 1% is the group. And at some point, our point in the heart becomes intense. And this is 3.3, 3.4, which is darkness and darkness and spirit and darkness. And this is where it's feeling a sense of wanting to reach the future. It feels that even the group is not able to provide for all its needs. It needs an individual to help it, to clean concepts more specifically. And this is called the individual phase, phase 4, individual, where the sense of self is no longer feeling part of the group. Rather, it's feeling an individual person who's going to pass individually. And it's in a group, which is in the spiritual society, which is in humanity. And this is called Malchut, kingdom. This is shown by the phases 4.1, which is unformed in spirit, and 4.2, which is chaos in spirit. And it's shown by an arrow wanting just to receive internal power. It understands that it wants to become the bestower. It wants the quality of bestowal itself to be able to bestow, because it understands that you can't actually bestow in the quality of reception. And then finally, 4.3, 4.4, which is darkness in spirit and spirit in spirit. This is where the person really gets to see in full measure their pain point, their point which is stopping them from crossing the barrier. And then by cleaning the final concepts, they can pass the barrier. Here's a summary of the phases. Before the barrier, we have preparation, keter, crown, root, phase, thought of creation. Then we have chokhmah, wisdom, phase 1, humanity informed. Bina, understanding, phase 2, spiritual society, chaos, passive point in the heart. Tiferet, beauty, phase 3, group, darkness, active point in the heart. And then finally, Malchut, kingdom, phase 4, individual spirit, intense point in the heart. And then we pass the barrier. And here's all the phases again in a narrative. In the beginning, a person is in reality attracting external filling. But then the point in the heart awakens, and the person joins a society to learn how to bestow. However, the person feels no spiritual success. So the person joins a group to clean concepts together, until the point in the heart becomes so intense that the person works with individual friends as well. As a result from intense desire to become the creator, humanity is internalized into the person, then the spiritual society, then the group, and individuals. Then they arrive before the barrier. Then the person passes the barrier, receives a screen, and converts egoism into altruism. Any questions? Yes, Mark.
The only problem that I see here that I have, that this is my own personal problem, is because these are delineated and because these are broken out and because that you have shown each one of these phases, I get stuck in that. In my head, I get stuck in this. In other words, it's all or nothing. It's black and white. There's no gray area. It's hard for me to conceive, even though I understand that I am phase one, and I slide like a tuning bar or whatever you want to call it between these phases. So it's not cut and dried. I'm not in a bucket. I'm not in phase two and locked in phase two. I slide between these, and it's something that I need to get used to, or it's something I need to deal with in my head, I think.
I'd say like this, every human goes through specific phases, like they're a baby, and then they grow bigger, and then they become a child, and they go to school, and they become adolescent, and then they become an adult, and every person goes through these phases. But that doesn't limit us. It actually empowers us, because once we know what we're going through, it's much easier for us to understand. Today, kids understand the phases they're going through so much better than previous generations, and it allows even children to be able to handle what they're going through. They can understand, oh, that's why I'm going through growth periods. That's why I'm feeling like this or feeling like that. Kids have much more awareness, and then they're not having to go through it by just feeling the results. They can actually know what's going to come ahead of them. But knowing that you're going to become an adult, or knowing that you're going through adolescence, shouldn't limit you. It should empower you. It's like, oh, this is what I'm going to go through. I can prepare for this. What is not decided here is how long you go through each phase. So unlike in physicality, that more or less, it's decided for each child, more or less how many years he's going to be through each phase. Here, it's not decided. You could be 10 years in phase two, or you could be 1 year in phase two. And it's on the person to decide, depending on how he uses the environment and how they clean their concepts, to decide how long each person will be. There'll be specific people at specific phases that will suddenly feel that this is either too limiting for them, because it's expressing that there's actually a way that you can't just suddenly be in 2.2 and pass the barrier, that you have to actually go through the phases. And there might be some people that don't like that, and then they want to leave, and that's perfectly okay. The idea of system concepts is to convey information of advancement in order to empower the individual, and not to scare him. It's to show him what he's going to go through, and therefore he can actually prepare for things before they happen, and prepare for it accordingly, so he can go through them in the most shortest amount of time.
Thank you. And what's limiting me in some aspects is my linear thinking. In other words, if I'm in third grade, that doesn't mean I've given up ever being in first grade or kindergarten. I take that with me as I change. But your description or what you just said is perfect. Thank you.
The thing to remember is that, unlike with school, where if I'm in third grade, I'm no longer in second grade. Think of this where, you're in first grade, and then when you go to second grade, you don't stop going to first grade. You're still in first grade. It's like when you reach the spiritual society, it's still in humanity. You can't be like, oh, I'm going to learn how to bestow. I don't need my family, and I don't need a job anymore. And there are some people that have tried that and found out very quickly that, you still need humanity. So when you're in the spiritual society, you feel the sense of self as a spiritual society, but you're also in humanity. And the same thing is when you reach phase 3, the group. Your sense of self shifts to the group, and it can be very unsettling for some people. But you're still in the spiritual society and still in humanity at the same time, and you don't leave it. The sense of self changes, so you feel that the group is where you need to be, but you're still spending your time and effort in the spiritual society. The difference is your sense of wanting to excel in that phase changes. So when you're in humanity, you want to excel in humanity. You want to become, the richest person on earth, or you want to become the president of the United States, or you want to become something great in phase 1. When you shift to phase 2, you don't want to become great anymore in phase 1. You want to become great in phase 2. And when your sense of self shifts to phase 3, then you don't no longer want to, take specific roles in phase 2 in the spiritual society. Rather, your focus is on improving the relationship with the group and cleaning your concepts and as spending more emotional time in phase 3, even though you're spending physical time in phase 2, that your emotional time is no longer invested there. Your emotion shifts accordingly. And the same when you reach phase 4, your emotion shifts from the group to individual people, and that's where you feel most of your emotional scrutiny, while you're still in a group, still in spiritual society, and still in humanity. Any questions before we continue? All right, let's continue. Chapter 1.4, Darkroom. The first concept we're going to be going over is shapes. We have the circle, which is called restriction from inside, since the size of the circle is defined by its middle point. It's called Tzimtzum Aleph, which is the first restriction. And this is what happens when we pass the barrier. So when we pass the barrier, we go above our sense of self that we had before, which was the will to receive, which was in that Ein Sof, that boundless light. And now our sense of self is the quality of bestowal. And we're not saying that any part of our will to receive is better or worse. We're just going above it. Our sense of self shifts from the quality of reception to the quality of bestowal. From feeling myself as a person in this world to feeling myself as the creator or part of the creator. Then we have the square. The square is restriction from outside. So when we've gone above our will to receive, which was the circle, now we're looking down on our will to receive, and we're starting to decide how much of that will to receive we're going to convert from egoism to altruism. How much of that egoism are we going to let through? And by deciding how much we're going to let through, that already makes it into a square, which means it's a restriction from outside. Since we're above the will to receive, we're looking down on our will to receive and saying, we'll see who can come in and who cannot. And this is called a masach, a screen that we receive after the barrier. So when we first pass the barrier, what we'll feel that sensation of restriction, that sensation of emptiness, that we don't have a will to receive. And it'll be a little unsettling at the beginning. But then we receive our screen, and it's unconscious. And then we separate that we're not going to receive any more malchut, which is kingdom, and our focus is going to be on receiving chokhmah, which is wisdom, bina, understanding, and tiferet, beauty, which are the first 3 phases. Those will allow in through our screen to convert from egoism to altruism, while the malchut, the kingdom, the sense of self that we had before the barrier, we're going to restrict, and we're going to keep it starving. So the idea is that part of the flaw in the quality of bestowal is that it's flawless. So could we be, well, how is that a flaw? Well, it's a flaw if you want to advance. That is, if you feel the slightest bit of bestowal, you'll plateau. You'll feel the sensation of perfection, and that's it. You weren't able to advance anymore. So to solve this, the screen comes to keep your will to receive still burning with desire of wanting to become the creator, but without getting the satisfaction of actually becoming the creator. Then you've got your screen, which, even though your sense of self is now the quality of bestowal, it's allowing this will to receive to go through and convert to that altruism, but still keep that phase 4 starving. So it keeps on providing you fuel to move forward. And then finally, we have the triangle, which is a restriction from outside like the square. The difference is that Malchut raises to Bina, and this is called Tzimtzum Bet, second restriction, also called the Parsa. This is where we take reality and we start to internalize it, so we can actually do manipulations internally, and they will actually result in changes externally. So we understand that we don't have to change the world by going out and doing specific things, although we'll do so as our human aspect, because they're all built on each other, all the phases are built on each other. But we're able to have an additional outlet for changing things, which is done internally. So by making changes internally, consciously, I'll be able to make changes in reality externally. Second concept is receiving and bestowing. Receiving in order to receive is when we have no higher purpose. And this is shown by two arrows going down. So our kavanah, our intention, our perception is to receive. Our goal in life is to receive filling. And our ratzon, our desire, in reality is actually working on filling. And this is called Gufei Torah, the body of Torah, before the barrier. And this is when we're in humanity, phase 1. Then we reach bestowing in order to receive, which is called supporting the upper. And this is where our intention is still to receive, which is our kavanah, intention, perception is still to receive, but our desire, our ratzon, our reality is to bestow. We find an individual in the society, which is the teacher, that is in attainment, and our desire is to support that teacher through the society. This again is called Gufei Torah, the body of Torah before the barrier. Spiritual society, phase 2, the group, phase 3, and the individual, phase 4. And when we pass the barrier, that's when we reach bestowing in order to bestow, which is now we're the actual upper, so we're working as the upper. Our intention, our perception, our kavanah is to bestow, which means that our goal in life, when we say receiving filling, that means the goal in life is to plateau. The goal in life is to relax. And the idea is that when you pass the barrier, your goal in life is no longer to relax. Your goal in life is to actually gain, reach the degree where you've got absolute internal power. And this is also shown by the desire, the ratzon. Reality stays the same as it was in phase 2, where you want to support the upper, but the upper is yourself. And this is called Talmud Torah, again, the taste of Torah after the barrier. And this is the barrier, phase 1. And then finally, we have receiving in order to bestow, where we're using the lower to grow. And this is where our intention is the same as it was before. So our intention is to grow to absolute internal power. But now we're using our desire no longer supporting the upper as the upper. Now we're actually going down to the lower people, that is, people for the barrier, and helping them cross the barrier in order to continue to increase the Kabbalist's internal power, the person who's above the barrier. So you've got their work between the low, which is before the barrier, and the upper, which is above the barrier. And it's called Talmud Torah, the taste of Torah. After the barrier, Parasa phase 2, Atzilut phase 3, and end of correction phase 4. The Holy Ari. Dark room. The halal emptiness that remained after the tzimtzum restriction was a goal round. Number 4. Then there was a vacant place, 80, avir, air, and an empty halal, emptiness, from the very, very middle point. Behold, this tzimtzum restriction was even around that empty middle point, in such a way that the place of halal, emptiness, was a goal round on every side, completely even. It had not a shape of mu'ba, square, a perpendicular angle, for in Sof Boundless too had restricted himself, like an igul, a circle, even on all sides. What this means is that, well, we talked about beforehand about the shapes, that we don't cross the barrier because we don't want to be in the will to receive anymore. We cross the barrier because we want to be in the will to bestow. So it's not that we're doing any kind of checking, oh, this will to receive is good, this will to receive is bad. Rather, we just really want, it's a dormant, we want to really be in the quality of bestow. And that's why we only pass the barrier because we want to, not because we have to.
Exactly.
Yes.
You can say that also at that point, it's sort of going at it blind, kind of, not really looking at your will to receive. You just you don't really want to make basically any scrutinies on the will to receive at that point. It's just more of kind of, I want this, I don't know, you know what I mean? And I don't know what it is. I just want it, right?
You've done scrutinies on your will to receive to find out that there's no will to bestow within it at all.
Right.
And part of the problem why people don't get to pass the barriers because they can't face the concept of understanding that they have no will to bestow at all. That the will to receive can only be used for reception and cannot be used for bestowal. And people sort of are in the shell, or they lie to themselves that they can actually bestow in the will to receive. And it's only when a person totally understands in their heart and in their mind that they have no quality of bestowal whatsoever, then they can actually build a desire to want the quality of bestowal.
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess that's that whole process of la lishma, of like what not bestowal is, and then sort of you've reached that point of like saying you don't have it in every way. You know you don't have it, and you just want it.
Yes.
Right.
Balasunam commentary. Vacant place. Then there was a vacant place. 80 has already been explained in items 4 and 5. This is referring to that a vacant place is a vacant place for corrections. So it's a place where you see, as the creator, now that you've passed the barrier, you see a place for yourself to insert yourself, to work as the creator, because you could become the creator and be like, okay, so now everything's perfect and I've got nothing to do. And the idea is that no, you actually have a vacant place. You start to see where is your role as a co-creator, you could say. Where's your role to apply conscious changes with your internal power? Non-discriminatory. Discriminatory. Avir air and an empty halal emptiness from the very middle point. Behold, this tzimtzum restriction was even around that empty middle point. 90, meaning without discriminations of great and small. We should not wonder about that, since the shinut tzura, change of form, in the middle point has already been exposed by the departure of the aura light from it. Consequently, the smaller measurements were necessarily recognized as well, one smaller than the other. For example, B'china Gimel, third discernment, is purer than the middle point, because the measure of will to receive is less than B'china Daled, fourth discernment. Similarly, B'china Bet, second discernment, is purer than B'china Gimel, third discernment, because her measure of will to receive is smaller than B'china Gimel, third discernment, and B'china Aleph, first discernment, is the purest of all, for she has the least will to receive, rendering her Shinut Tzura, change of form, the least apparent. Thus we have a differentiation of great and small in the degrees. In that case, why does the Rav, the Holy Ari, say that the Tzimtzum restriction was even around that point? The answer is that the Tzimtzum restriction did not turn the middle point into a soft end. In other words, if the aura light had left the point because of her Shinut Tzura, change of form, then it would certainly become a soft end, meaning the lowest degree. That's what we said, that we don't pass the barrier because we feel a change of form. We pass the barrier because we really want to be in that quality of bestowal.
What does it mean? Let me back up one slide.
Yeah.
In other words, it is the Ol had left the point because of her Shinut Tzara, then it would certainly become a Sof, meaning the lowest degree. What's going to become a Sof?
So the idea is that after the barrier, when we go to our screen, we make the will to receive B'china Daled into a Sof, into an end, that we say we don't want to receive there. But when we did the restriction, it's not we said, here we want to receive and here we don't. We just didn't want to receive anything. It was a restriction above all of it. So it's not that we were saying, oh, we want to receive B'china Aleph, Bet, and Gimel, but B'china Daled we don't want to receive, like we said, the square shape. This is what it's saying, that it's not about a square, it's about a circle. The restriction is from the inside out, and we're not saying that I want to limit anything. I just want to go above it.
Right. So it turns once that fourth discernment becomes that Sof, that's when it becomes a square, because you've differentiated now between different types of desires. Exactly,
and that's why it says, meaning without discriminations of great and small. The restriction is without discriminations. I'm just going, it's like when you have an evacuation. You don't start saying, oh, you're an employee, you can stay here. Just everybody has to go out, no matter who you are. And then when you're letting people in, then you're saying, oh, only employees of this company are allowed in. So you're already differentiating between who can come in and who cannot. So you could say restriction is like an evacuation. Everybody out. I don't care who you are. And then you have, afterwards you have the square, which is the screen where you're saying only employees can enter and non-employees can't enter.
Yeah, but at the same time, that last part, that's always restricted. That stuff, that's that last...
The B'china Daled, yes. That's why we said the B'china Daled becomes the Sof. Because we're not receiving into that B'china Daled. We're receiving the B'china Shoresh, Aleph, Bet, and Gimel, the root phase, the first, second, and third phases we're allowing in, but the fourth phase we're not allowing in. Future desire, not current deficiency. Then we would also regard the three preceding bchinot, discernments, as more important than the middle point, as one above the other. However, it is not so, for the tzimtzum restriction did not occur due to the shinut tzura, change of form, in the point. This cannot be, for we are still concerned with Malchut, kingdom, the Ein Sof, boundless, in which there is no shinut tzura, change of form, between her and the all light. They are both in simple unity, meaning he is one and his name one. The tzimtzum restriction occurred only because his ratzon pashut, simple desire, wished to create the olamot, worlds, etc. See item 40. It means that he wanted that hishtafut tzura, equivalence of form, which is destined to appear by the creation of the olamot, worlds, meaning the form of reception in order to bestow contentment to the maker. There is a great virtue in that. On the one hand, it is complete bestowal, because the ratzon desires only to bestow contentment upon the maker and not at all for oneself. That makes the tzura form completely equal with the Orelion, upper light, of the Matzil emanator and in complete adhesion with him. On the other hand, it is possible to deepen and increase the vessel of reception indefinitely and internally. This is because now the form of reception does not produce any shinut tzura, change of form, as it comes from within the will to bestow.
Okay.
Yes.
That third sentence is amazing because it says there's a great virtue in that. On one hand, it is complete bestowal because the ratzon is only to bestow contentment upon the maker and not at all for oneself. So basically, once your attention starts to change from bestowing in order to bestow, that's actually true bestowal, contentment to the maker. Before, it's not even true contentment to the maker. That's what that says.
What's it?
Question.
That bestow in order to bestow is not the complete bestowal?
Well, basically, I'm saying after you pass the barrier and get the actual quality of bestowal, then it's actual contentment to the maker. Where beforehand, before the barrier, you don't have the will to bestow. It's not even true contentment to the maker.
Yes.
Because
True.
Before it was for oneself.
I would say like this. On one hand, it's not true contentment to the maker, but on the other hand, since you're advancing, you could say that it is contentment to the maker because you will become the maker, and therefore you'll look back and see that it was contentment the entire time.
Right.
You didn't feel it. We're talking about here about how you feel, right? So the idea is that before the barrier, you can't feel that you're bestowing contentment to the maker. You might think you are, and you think normally that the maker's outside of you because how could it be me? It's only when your sense of self shifts to the creator, and that's how did Kabbalists know what the creator feels? Well, it's because they actually become two sort of, you could say, selves. They become their body self and they become their creator self, and then they can say, as a creator, I'm enjoying this.
Yeah.
Yes, Mark.
Sefir has a question that he posted in the chat, and I know you can't see this. He says, so that the circle means internal and the square means external.
Yes. The circle is internal because you're doing the restriction when your sense of self is the quality of reception. So you're going from inwards, you're going outwards. That is not someone who's coming into you and saying, you better become the quality of bestowal, which would mean external. It comes from within. You want to become the quality of bestowal, and therefore you're going above you want to receive. As the phase, so the phase 4 is going above the receive, not that the group is forcing him or the spiritual society is forcing him or humanity is forcing him to pass the barrier. He passed the barrier because he wants to, and that's called a circle because the restriction is from within, right? While the square, now you're actually the creator, you look down on your will to receive, and you're saying, let's see what we're going to allow in and what we're going to not allow in. So it's not that the will to receive is deciding what it's going to let through, rather you as the quality of bestowal are saying, let me see what I'm going to allow to come through. So you could say, in the circle, the desire is from the ne'etzal, it's from the will to receive. And in the square is from the desire of the matzil, where you are the matzil. You are the creator.
It's fantastic.
Yes, it is.
Good discernment, Caesar, and thank you, Zakai, for answering it for him.
Thank you, Mark, for raising it. Jenny, did you want to ask a question before?
No, it's not clear yet. I'll have to come back.
No problem. Giving by receiving. Our sages have said that with an important personality, if she gives the matrimony capital, And he says, with this I thee sanctify, then she is sanctified. It is written in the Torah, and giveth it in her hand, meaning it is the husband who is to give the matrimony capital. However, because he is important, the pleasure she receives from him is exactly the same as giving. An important person who receives money from her is similar to him giving her money. It is written in the Torah, and give it in her hand, because he receives only in order to bestow contentment to the woman, to honor her with his reception. We learn from the above that the primary reason for the tzimtzum restriction was the desire for the new form of reception in order to bestow, that is destined to appear by the creation of the Olamot worlds, see item 40. However, it was not at all by the reason of the aviut coarseness she felt in the middle point, for there was no aviut coarseness and difference there at all. Hence, the middle point did not become a soft end because of the tzimtzum restriction. That is, it is impossible to distinguish a small matter from a great one. That is why the Rav, the Holy Ari, writes that the tzimtzum restriction was completely even. And it's just to explain again that point that we didn't feel the aviut coarseness. It's not we were like, oh, with the will to receive, therefore I should become the will to bestow. It's not because you feel the will to receive is something wrong with it. You just really want the quality of bestowal. And what it talks beforehand about the matrimony capital, what it's saying that when you're receiving in order to bestow, you would say, oh, but you're still receiving. It's like, no, I'm giving it to bestow. I'm giving it to my internal power, and therefore it's not considered that my will to receive is receiving. Rather, it's giving, because that's exactly what I need. As the Kabbalist has passed the barrier, as he feels a sense of creator, and he wants more internal power, he's going to use his will to receive to give him that internal power. So even though you could say, but the will to receive at the end of the day is enjoying itself, yes, it is, but it's what the will to bestow wants from it. The will to bestow as the sense of self, as the creator wants the body to also enjoy and give it and actually gain internal power from others and latch onto them and use them to increase his internal power. Not for me after leaving. In such a way that the place of halal was a goal round on every side completely even. 100, it means that there was some image that had to be made by reason of the tzimtzum restriction. Through the tzimtzum restriction was even, as explained above thoroughly, and not because of any shinutzua change of form. After the tzimtzum restriction and the departure of the Or light from that middle point, it became apparent that the Or Elyon upper light is unfit to cleave to it because of her tzua form of the gadlut greatness of reception. Because that became known, she fell from the degrees she had in Ein Sof, boundless, and was now regarded as sof end, meaning the lowest possible aviyut coarseness. Only that middle point remained a vacant halal, emptiness, unfit to clothe the all light. See item 6. And the three former b'chinot discernments in virtue and purity were still fit to clothe the all light, even after the tzimtzum restriction. The reason I wrote not for me after leaving, it's very important not to say, oh, so you're saying that phase 4 isn't very good. I'll do this before the barrier. I'll already do a restriction on it. You can't do a restriction on something you don't have. You need to go through all the phases. It would be like an adult, it would be like a child learning about adolescence and saying, I don't want to go through adolescence because I heard it's painful. I want to, skip straight to the adult phase. And you can't. You have to go through the adolescence. You have to go through being a teenager. So it's the same thing here. You have to reach that huge phase 4 of desire to receive in order to restrict it and have it keeping you going after the barrier. Your fuel becomes your will to receive that phase 4. But the idea is that you don't let it sip into your sense of self. You don't allow it to cloud your mind and make you plateau. When a person passes the barrier, they don't have a party that they pass the barrier because they feel that sense of restriction. They feel that they don't want to allow that will to receive of that b'china daled to allow it into themselves because it will make them plateau and then they won't advance anymore. They'll just be happy that they're in perfection and stay there. And it is we want to move from perfection to perfection, from flawlessness to flawless states.
There's still discernments after the barrier, isn't there?
Yes, there are. Your discernment's the whole way.
It's just on another level. So we're always discerning, we're always scrutinizing. It's just when you get above the barrier, is it different discernment at a different level, or is it the same, but it just doesn't grab you as much?
Well, there's before the barrier, your discernments are basically, how do I pass the barrier? And then after the barrier, you have two kinds of discernments. You have, how do I continue advancing in the quality bestow, how to increase my screen, the strength of it, and pass those degrees. But at the same time, you also have now a different worry is, how do I convey to others the degrees of how to pass the barrier? So before the barrier, your sense of self is the will to receive. So you want to know, how do I increase my will to receive to be able to pass the barrier? After the barrier, you're not working on your will to receive anymore. Rather, you're working on your screen, how to increase my screen. And then you'd be like, well, then why are you working on sort of learning more about the phases before the barrier? Well, that's in order to convey to others who haven't passed yet, how do they pass in the most quickest and shortest way possible.
Thank you.
Going above the ego. We have explained above previous item that she did not become a soft end for the above reason. This is the meaning of the precision of the Rav, the Holy Ari, when he says that that place of a halal was a goal around on every side completely even. He wishes to say that it's not an actual soft end, but it's like the soft in a round picture, whose soft is the end, is in the middle. You can compare these four b'chinot discernments to four circles, one within the other, like onion skins. Central igul, a circle, is b'china daled, surrounded by b'china gimel, third discernment, surrounded by b'china bet, second discernment, surrounded by b'china aleph, first discernment. This way, there is no up or down, right or left. For example, b'china aleph, first discernment, is above all of them in its one half, and below all of them in its other half, and so it is in all the b'chinot discernments. Therefore, there is no up or down, right or left here. There is no difference between their virtue, and they all are completely even. It has already been explained above item. The reason for the tzimtzum restriction was not the shinut tzorah, change of form. This is also the meaning of the precision of the Rav, the Holy Ari, a goal around on every side completely even. It had not a shape of merubah, square, a perpendicular angle, for Ein Sof boundless too had restricted himself like an igul, circle, even on all sides.
Okay, it's strange that that sentence where it says that he wishes to say that it is not an actual sof, but is like the sof in a round picture, whose sof is in the middle. It's weird that when you're looking at a circle, that they're considering that the sof here is the middle, where, normally I would see a circle and I would see that like sort of the sof, the end of it is like sort of the outskirts, the boundary of the circle. But here it's kind of like the middle point is like the sof. Which is here it's saying it's not an actual sof because you don't have a screen yet, but it's interesting how they use the middle point as like this fake sof, I guess you could say,
Well, the idea is that because of the b'china daled is the middle, and you're doing a sof on that when you get your screen. So
right.
It's right at the ending. So it's not looking at a circle like it's not talking about physical space, right? So it's not like, oh, I'm at the edge of the universe or something. Rather, it's talking about, it's giving a circle as a concept, right? These are spiritual concepts that we feel in our emotions, right? We can't take our emotions and say, well, I'm feeling more towards the left, this emotion, towards the right, another emotion. Rather, we give different attributes to the emotions, and that's how we start to build like a picture of our emotion. But it's not that we can actually go and see in our brain like physical differences.
Yeah, that's the thing, it's like, like this stuff, it's just a picture, you can't really, it's the best way they came to describe certain states and emotions, that's the best way they can do it, right?
Right. Could it be explained in a different sort of form? As it could. There are, they used it for many reasons. One is, for example, like the idea that the circle is restriction from the inside and square is restriction from the outside. So they're using a lot of knowledge of shapes and structure and stuff like that to express all these different discernments. 1.5, complete contrast. The Holy Ari. Because Or Ein Sof boundless light was even, the tzimtzum restriction too was even. This is the meaning of the igul, circle. Number 5, the reason was that since Or Ein Sof boundless light was completely even, it had to have restricted itself evenly on all sides and not restrict itself on one side more than on the others. It is known in the wisdom of geometry that there is none so even as the image of the igul, circle. However, this is not the case with the merubah, square, with the bulging perpendicular angle, the mishulash, triangle, and all the other images. For that reason, some restriction had to have the form of an igul, circle. I think this is self-explained what we talked about beforehand. And then the Balasalam commentary, which is very short. So you have the circle. It is known in the wisdom of geometry that there is none so even as the image of the igul, circle. 200 has already been explained in the previous item. Square. However, this is not the case with the merubah, square. 300. If there had been a differentiation of up and down, right and left there, it would appear in the image of a merubah square, which contains these four sides, being the four names of these prinot discernments. However, it was not so, but in the form of an igul, circle, which does not contain these discernments. And then finally, the triangle with the bulging perpendicular angle, the mishulash triangle, 400, indicating a degree that has but three prinot discernments, lacking prinat daled, fourth discernment, meaning three sides, up, right, and left. It lacks the bottom side, hence the name mishulash triangle. And that's it. We've gone through now the whole of the first chapter. What do you think?
I love it, man. It's amazing. I mean, look, before before you start presenting it this way, TES for me was very painful, and it's quite enjoyable now.
In reference to the square, if I can ask a question.
Please feel free.
The up and down and right and left that's stated there, the up and down, does that relate to the phases where we're located, and then the right and left where we're located, where in the circle everything was equal in discernments, I guess is what I heard, and then now the square, it's actual conscious discernments. Is that what that means?
You have conscious discernments even before the barrier and after the barrier. The difference is, before the barrier, you're in the will to receive. So it's like when you go, when you're on, you're at your house, you don't feel that you're higher or lower in altitude. But when you go on the plane and you're looking down, that's where you see like higher parts and lower parts of your town. But when you're in the town and you're walking up and down and left and right, you don't actually feel that you're going up and down, left or right. You're in town. And it's only when you go outside and look at it from the plane, then you look down and you start saying, oh, this area is higher than that area. Or this area is lower than that area, and so forth. So what it's saying is that you don't do discernments of when you're passing the barrier, which is what it's trying to explain in the circle, you pass it not because phase 4 is better than phase 3, or phase 3 is better than phase 2, and phase 2 is better than phase 1. You're passing it because you're thinking of the will to bestow. You're not of the will to receive. You want that quality bestowal. But when you get that quality bestowal, now your sense of self is shifted to the quality bestowal. Then you're looking at your will to receive and saying, what can I handle? What can I not? Well, if I allow my will to receive, that phase 4, to get the sensation of, wow, I made it, I passed the barrier, you'll plateau. So you put a restriction on it, that you say, I don't want that phase 4, that huge desire to want to become the creator. I don't want it to ever feel that it actually made it. Because if it felt that it made it, that's it. I would relax. I wouldn't do anything. There's so much more to do after the barrier, that if I allow that will to receive to enter me and actually feel that sensation of, oh, I made it, I passed the barrier, that's it. I won't want to work anymore. So I am purposely restricted so that I won't feel that sensation of, oh, I passed, it's amazing, and I don't have to do anything anymore.
Okay, so in the process of getting to the barrier, we're going from the circle to the square. So we're, for instance, when I try to think about where I'm at now and all of my discernments and what I'm basing my discernments on, I'm feeling the discernments that relate to the phases below, and I'm searching for discernments that will relate to my phases above, and I'm gauging my discernments whether they're right and left. So So, for instance, recalling the sensation of phase 2 when first coming to this system concepts and cleaning things, I felt the sensation of sliding back into that plateau and fearing that. So I was feeling that lower and wanting. So basically, I'm playing with the sensations in all the phases and at the same time, I'm actually building that square or those screens.
So the idea is before you pass the barrier, you don't actually have a screen. Before you pass the barrier, you're only in the will to bestow, the will to receive. And when you feel the sense of self shifting from phase 2 to phase 3 or from phase 3 to phase 4, you're still in the other phases physically, right? You're still in phase 1 in humanity, you still have a family. You still are in the spiritual society, but your sense of self shifts. So you're not saying, I don't want to be in phase 2. You still are in phase 2. You're still in phase 1. Your sense of self, your sense of belonging is to phase 3. So then you could say, well, why isn't that a square? Because you're not actually restricting anything. You're not restricting the desire of it. You have no problem enjoying yourself in phase 2, and you're not scared that you're going to fall into that plateau. You can still go to, the lessons, and you can still be in a group meeting and all that stuff. It's because your sense of self has shifted. It's no longer a problem for you. You won't feel that by, actually going to a phase 2 event, it will make you plateau. The other way around, it will normally cause you frustration and cause you to gain discernment. So you're not worried that you're going to get lost in the kumbaya feeling.
Well, actually, no, I don't now, but in the past, before
phase 2,
past, I did recall that sensation. And my question is really just is that an example of us playing? It's like playing on, not playing the game to sense that feeling of a kind of a restriction. Or I mean, I know that I don't have my screen yet, but is that sensation that I recall when experiencing that, or thinking, okay, I'm reacting, I'm discerning something and sensing, okay, is this a left? Am I too far to the right in this? Am I too far to the left in this? And would I, is this a level higher? Is this how Moshe Zakai would do it? Or anybody else, or Jeffrey, or Debbie, or anybody else who maybe at a level upper to me? Isn't that kind of sensing or playing what it will be to create? Isn't it just like playing to develop the screen?
As your screen is the point in the heart, right? So the point in the heart grows and grows, and after every subdegree, which is always then that 0.2 path. So you have the 0.2 below it, which is considered below the chazer, which is the chest, and you've got the 0.2 above, like 0.3 and 0.4, which are considered above the chest. So when you're in that 0.3, 0.4, you're always worried about that you'll fall back into the lower of that phase, right? So when you're in 0.3, 0.4, you're afraid you'll fall into 0.1 or 0.2 of, let's say, phase 2. But when you reach that phase 3, that's no longer your worry. When we say we have a screen, the screen is basically, we go through the point in the heart, we go from the passive to active to intense, and then it becomes the screen. So we will feel sensations of it's one of the, like you would say like this: why are we learning about the screen if we haven't passed the barrier? And the idea is that we'll feel sensations of this screen even before the barrier. The difference is that after the barrier, it's a state. When we talk about a state of a screen, I'm in a state of it. When I'm in the society, I don't feel the state of plateauing in phase 2 when I'm not in a phase 2 activity. It's only when I'm in a phase 2 activity, that's where I might be scared. But when we pass the barrier, it's a state. We're in that state that all day and all night, we're with that screen. We're not letting that phase 4 get that feeling of, wow, I actually passed the barrier. So you can see a difference there between, before the barrier, we're always dealing with actions. And the intention is on an action. And the idea is to shift to states where we're not thinking of actions, we're thinking of states. So when I'm in a state of bestowal, I'm not in an action of bestowal. I might not be doing anything. I'm sitting on my couch, not doing anything. And if you pass the barrier, then you're feeling bestowed. It's like you're not doing anything. get up and start doing something. It's like, no, it's not about actions. It's about states. Yes, Moshe.
You said before that the point of the heart becomes the screen. So what is that saying? Is that can we say that the point of the heart, we're expanding the point of the heart like a balloon before the barrier by sort of increasing our desire, and that desire for power, that becomes that balloon. And after the barrier, that's that screen that we use, that we prepared beforehand.
We're injecting discernments into the screen. It's like we learned in one of the translated articles of Rav that we're trying to collect discernments of between the will to receive and the will to bestow. Well, that's exactly the screen, right? Normally in humanity, we're collecting discernments in the will to receive. It's like, how do I become a better chef? How do I become a better parent? How do I become a richer person? How do I make more money? And so forth, right? So we're collecting discernments in the will to receive. And then learning about the Creator would be like, oh, isn't the Creator great? Then you're getting discernments in the will to bestow. Mm-hmm. The screen is the conversion point between the will to receive and the will to bestow. So if you're learning of discernments between those two qualities, that's building your screen.
So what is it? The screen is a combination of all the discernments you've made beforehand?
Yes.
Could you say it?
Yeah, the screen is the accumulation of discernments that you made before the barrier.
And then after the barrier, it's
activated.
And then it's just continuing to gain discernments through that screen.
Right, but the idea is that you're doing it from the opposite end. So before the barrier, you're building your discernments of the screen where you're below. And then when you've gone above, then you're collecting discernments when your sensation of self is above the screen, not below the screen.
So you can say from below, you're kind of looking above at your screen, which doesn't really exist yet. And you're just kind of gaining discernments. Well, I guess it exists, but it's above you and it's concealed from you. So it's, so you're gaining discernments on that point. And then after the barrier, you're looking down at all those discernments that you've made. Now you're looking down through your screen, right?
Yes. Yeah, the screen is a filter. You're filtering in.
At that point, it's revealed to you. So,
yes. Yes, you're actually using it.
Right. Before it's concealed, you have it, it's concealed from you, and you're building more discernments on that screen, but it's concealed from you. And then after the barrier, it's revealed to you, and you're looking down through it from the will to bestow.
Right. It's like the difference between before the barrier, you're going to the bank and getting a loan, and then after the barrier, you're an employee of the bank giving the loan.
Right. Just from a higher place. Yeah.
So you're both collecting discernments on the loan. The difference is that the discernments that someone's going to collect when they're getting a loan is going to be slightly different from the person who's collecting discernments of how to give a loan.
Okay.
So, I'm sorry, go ahead.
That guy, after the barrier, when you acquire your screen, aren't you more discreet with your discernments? Isn't it different? Like you don't let things that you have allowed prior to the barrier really affect you. They're nonsensical sometimes. Do you ever feel that way? That
I'd say like this. The problems that someone in the quality of bestowal, it's not all hunky-dory. You're not feeling all great all the time. You do have descents and you do have problems. The problems are different. If there are problems before the barrier you're having about your actual advancement, how do you pass, and you have problems with your family or money or different things like that, when you pass the barrier, you still might have those problems, but they don't take up most of your time. Most of your time of thinking is, how do I advance? And how do I get other people past? And you'll feel pain of, if someone plateaus, it'll cause you immense pain. So it's like, but are they dying? It's like, no. Do they have any problems in their life? It's like, no. So why are you worried about them? They're plateauing spiritually. It's like, what do you care about that? Just, care about yourself. It's like, what can I do? This quality of bestowal makes it feel like you're going to have to care about other people's advancement as well. Rich man's problems.
thanks.
Is there a relationship between the middle line and the building of the screen?
That is the middle line. The middle line is the screen. It makes peace between the left line and the right line. The middle line doesn't actually exist as in itself, right? So you've got the left line, which is the will to receive. You've got the right line, which is the will to bestow. These are just qualities. Then you've got the screen, which does the combination between them, mixes between them. And that's what all the, Talmud Sefirot is about, is how to, all the different manipulations that you can do with these two qualities. It's like computers are only zeros and ones, but, yet we're having an entire conversation here. It's all just zeros and ones. It's like, well, look how many combinations, what can be created. The reason why a Kabbalist wants others to advance is that after the barrier, you still can advance with inertia. So, you're basically, it's like, when you're floating into space, you still have some movement. But at a certain point, because of acceleration needs, you basically latch on to students, you latch on to people that you can use their desire. Since you've blocked your own desire, your will to receive of phase 4, you have to latch onto other people's desires and get them past the barrier for them to constantly push you forward. It's like the system made it on purpose that the upper would need the lower and the lower need the upper. So those below the barrier need somebody above the barrier to get them past the barrier. And then those above the barrier need people below the barrier to actually push them even higher up in their equality bestowal.
Is that where that suckling is? Even though, you know what I mean? But it's different above than it is below.
Yes. But the difference is the suckling is actually from the barrier to the parasa. So the idea is that the parasa is already when you're no longer suckling, you're already a person who can stand on his own, and that is why you can actually when you're going back to your group, you're still going back to your group, but you're independent of them. You're using them. You don't need them. You want them. Again, it's this idea of just beforehand you pass the barrier because you want to. You go back to the group because you want to, not because you need to. Yes, Mark.
Thanks.
Well, what you just said, I think, explains a little bit something that William told me at one time. I was telling him how thankful I was that that the EC was there and that he was a teacher and all this stuff. And he said, no, he said, I need to thank you because I need somebody behind me to push. I need to bring somebody up behind me. I need to create a vacancy for you to fill. So it seems similar to what the concept that you just described to me.
So repeat that.
At one point in time, I was telling William in the EC, I was saying how thankful I was that the EC was there, that there were teachers, that there were people that could impart this knowledge to us. And he said, oh no, he said, I am so thankful for you and the other students because as we need somebody behind us in order for us to move forward. So we constantly need to bring more people in order to push me forward. And it seems similar to the concept that you just described.
Yes, it is. The phase 2 spiritual society, its growth is only on the same idea of bringing people from phase 1 into phase 2. Remember that phase 2 is about altruism without self-benefit. That means they can't even benefit themselves as a society. And their only way of getting new energy is from getting people from phase 1 into phase 2, into spiritual society. And then they get an initial push of, it's called new blood in the society. And they constantly need that new blood in, because what happens to people in phase 2, that they decay over time. They lose their momentum, and then they constantly need new blood coming in from new people that haven't felt that decay, and they've got that initial push each time.
Well, and I think you also mentioned in our last meeting that in phase 2, which I've seen this or I've experienced this myself, it's from event to event. In between, there's nothing, or there's an actual lull or a descent. But we're in phase 2. I'm so dependent on this next event. What is the next Congress? What is the next gathering? What is the next meeting? I have to have this in order to maintain my position or maintain where I'm at.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Phase 2's bestowal is based on actions. Exactly, from event to event, on action to action. And then when you pass the barrier, it's not from action to action. You're in a state of bestowal. You're feeling great, even you're doing nothing. It's like, what are you doing right now? Nothing. So why are you feeling so great? Because I'm in the quality bestowal all the time, 24/7. And while in phase 2, you're not in the quality bestowal, so you constantly have to work on that next action to keep your blood circulating in your system. And if you don't, you feel terrible. And you constantly need to focus on the next congress or the next dissemination project or the next thing you're doing to keep yourself moving. And the idea is that the motivational factor in phase 2 is the society. So the society gives you that next action, which normally propagates from the teacher down to the students. And that becomes the next thing they focus on. And that's all their entirety is this next action. You have to be aligned to that next action. It's like, but I'm doing this dissemination thing. No, the main thing now is the Congress. And then the Congress ends, and it's like, now dissemination. Dissemination is the biggest thing since sliced bread. And the next thing, oh, it's the Congress. Oh, we've never had a Congress like this before. It's amazing. And it's just constantly from action to action, and you constantly have this descent over each action, because once it's over, it's over. And that's why it's not spirituality, because it's based on time, space, and motion. You have to be at a specific time, at a specific space, with specific people, which is specific motion. When you're in the state of spirituality, you're not doing anything. You're not at a specific time, not a specific space, and not a specific motion. You could be with your kids, feeling bestowal. You could be, at your group, feeling bestowal. You could be asleep, feeling bestowal. You wake up, you're in bestowal. Although there is an actual login process, you could say, every morning when you wake up. But still, you very quickly log in, and you're back into the quality of bestowal. You're just feeling great, even though you're not doing anything. And that's, you could see one of the differences between phase 2 bestowal, which is based on actions, on physical actions, and after the barrier, which is just you're in a state of bestowal. And in phase 3, part of the hardship of phase 3, phase 4 and phase 2 are total opposite to each other. And we don't even understand, especially in lower phase, we don't even understand that opposition, how total opposite they are to each other. Because phase 4 doesn't want to bestow at all. It'd be like, well, isn't phase 4 like phase 1? It's like, no, because phase 1 wants to receive filling, and phase 4 wants to receive internal power, which is bestow. It wants to receive that primacy, it wants to receive the quality of it. But phase 2 doesn't want the quality of bestowal. It wants to bestow in the quality of reception. It doesn't want to become the creator, it wants to be like the creator. So the creator, what does it do? Bestow? I want to do bestow. And it focuses on the action and not on the state. So it says the creator does actions of bestowal, I want to do actions of bestowal. And in phase 4, it says, oh, forget about that. All I want to focus on is just, I want the power, I want to receive the primacy, I want to receive the degree of the creator, I want to receive the quality of the bestower, and not just do actions of bestowing, because I'm terrible at bestowing, because I don't have the quality itself. I need the quality itself in order to actually bestow. Okay, I think we'll end here and enter the after party.